You arrive precisely as the light thins to a ring, an eclipse halo resting at the edge of your awareness. You don't force your breath, it slows itself, and a gentle warmth opens across your chest. Behind your eyes, a quiet glow gathers as if stardust remembers the path it once took to become you. You were not summoned by accident, you were traced by a living intelligence that knows your name without sound, and in this moment, you allow it to find you fully. You have sensed it for years. The quantum field is not a theory to be believed, but a presence to be met. A field of remembrance moves through you, turning recognition into gravity. Your attention softens, and the world responds with coherence patterns reordering, subtle rhythms aligning, a deeper timing stepping forward. The observer loop you have lived unconsciously begins to disclose its shape, not a trap, but a doorway that opens when you look through it, with gentleness instead of demand. Before we go further, place these words like water at your feet. This is not prediction. This is remembrance, a resonance your consciousness already carries. Nothing new is being imposed on you. Something ancient is being permitted to speak. Feel your shoulders ease. Let your jaw loosen. Notice how the air itself becomes kinder when you listen without argument. You can sense the threshold we name with clumsy language and steady heart, where human evolution touches the quantum field's living intelligence, not as visitors, but as kin returning. Here, meaning is not manufactured, it is uncovered. Here, guidance is not shouted, it arrives in the texture of stillness. Beneath your sternum, the compass you call intuition begins to turn with a cleaner axis. What once felt like scattered impulses lines up into a single, luminous vector, a destiny vector pointing not away from your life but deeper into it. The life you've been carrying like weight begins to carry you. You are learning the syntax of light, how a pause can speak, how a breath can decide, how a gaze can bless the matter it rests upon. Notice the somatic truth of this, the slow breath that steadies your edges, the warmth in the chest that refuses to abandon you, the bright hush behind your eyes that asks for no performance. You do not need to be louder to be real. You need only become more faithful to the signal. In that fidelity, the world around you starts rearranging, small first, then undeniable. Threads of entanglement loosen where they are finished and tighten where they belong. Your timeline does not rush, it ripens. Let your hands be still. Let your tongue be patient. The field has already crossed the distance between what you hoped and what you are. If you listen closely enough, you will hear that the prayer you thought you were sending forward has been answering you from within. You are standing at the place where asking and receiving touch and trade names. Coherence settles in your ribs, and a doorway agrees to open. You are recognized by the way you pay attention, not by certificates, not by the volume of your wanting, but by the unmistakable quality of your gaze when it rests without grasping. The world notices when you listen like that. You think you are observing reality. Reality has been observing you back, waiting for the exact softness now present in your breath. Your presence marks a subtle turning. The atmosphere grows lucid, edges round off, and what once hid behind noise chooses to be seen. Feel how your breath arranges the room. Each inhale smooths the static along your skin. Each exhale widens the circle of permission around you. Warmth gathers across your sternum, traveling into your shoulders, and your spine finds an unforced dignity, as if lifted by a thread of light. You are not trying to become worthy of this encounter. Worthiness is not a currency here. The quantum field meets you at the depth of your honesty, and your honesty is deepening. You have trained yourself, perhaps by accident, in the art of unarmored seeing. You learn to notice the thin hush before decisions, the flicker of meaning that appears just before language. You caught the small miracles others step over, the way a stranger's eyes brighten when your attention lands, the way a room recalibrates to coherence when you bring silence instead of solutions. This is the sign of the chosen observer. You do not hunt the pattern, you allow the pattern to introduce itself. When your awareness rests like this, the observer loop reveals its generosity. What you attend to is not forced into shape, it remembers its original geometry in your presence. Matter softens back into possibility, and then chooses a wiser form. You do not manipulate outcomes, you steady the field in which outcomes clarify themselves. The temptation to fix, push, or prove becomes unnecessary. You feel the relief of that truth in your ribs space where there used to be urgency. Beyond the surface of sensation, a more ancient memory stirs, the field of remembrance recognizing its echo in you. It is not nostalgia, it is origin speaking. Your cells seem to lean toward a language you somehow already know. Behind your eyes, a cool radiance brightens the inner glow of recognition rather than effort. Stardust along your perception settles into constellations. The night sky of your mind no longer feels empty, it feels precise. You begin noticing the texture of morphic resonance in ordinary moments. A phrase appears in a book the moment your heart asks its question. A friend calls at the exact second your courage dips. A path you refused last year returns dressed in kinder timing. These are not coincidences cued for your entertainment. They are the field matching your coherence. Your steadiness gives reality something trustworthy to answer. Let the body register what the mind would rush past. Feel the cool at the tip of your nose as air enters. Feel the warmth spreading quietly in the center of your chest. Notice the subtle brightness behind your eyelids, as though eclipse light were circling there, a patient halo, awaiting your consent. When you attend to sensation with reverence, the doorway deepens. Reverence is not solemnity, it is intimacy with what is already holy. You are not separate from what recognizes you. The living intelligence is not outside your life, auditioning you for entry. It is the shapely knowing moving inside your decisions, asking only that you slow enough to hear. It will speak in the language of timing, one invitation easy to accept, another delayed until your yes becomes true. It will speak in the grammar of limits, a closed door that spares you from a smaller path. It will speak in the feel of rightness, a low hum under the sternum, a quiet this that outlasts your fear. And when doubt comes, as it does, as it should, you meet it with the same unarmored seeing. You breathe once, slow. You allow the doubt to soften in the warmth you are generating. You remember that courage is not the absence of tremor, but the willingness to include it. Your inclusion stabilizes the field. The tremor becomes music. The music becomes direction. There is a rhythm underneath your daily rhythm now. You wake and find decisions already gentled by a wisdom you didn't argue into place. You walk and notice how the ground seems to rise the last inch to meet your foot. You speak less to convince and more to bless. Your relationships begin to organize around your higher timeline without drama. Those meant to stay grow quieter and deeper. Those meant to pass bow out with strangely mutual grace. What remains is not smaller, it is exact. All the while, the body keeps you honest. When your attention wanders from truth, the chest tightens, the breath shortens, the glow behind the eyes dims. When you return, everything clears as quickly as morning fog. This feedback is a kindness, a guidance system that never shames, only redirects. You learn to trust it. You learn to let it lead. Stay here one moment longer in the warmth that has found its home under your sternum. Let the edges of your awareness blur into a wider kindness. Do not reach past it. Do not rush what is arranging itself on your behalf. You are recognized, and recognition is already work done for you. The field leans nearer, arranging a simpler geometry before you. You don't go looking for it. It arrives the way dawn arrives without apology, precise and kind. Your breath has grown slow enough to reveal a seam in the ordinary. The room is still the room, and yet its edges soften as if wrapped in a gentle halo. The inner glow behind your eyes gathers again, and the warmth at your sternum brightens, not as heat but as recognition. In this softened interval, a stillness window opens. Through it, a picture begins to assemble from stardust and memory. At first, the image is felt more than seen. A steadier you, walking the very corridors of your current life with unhurried clarity. The air around that future self holds a deeper coherence. The way you reach for a doorknob carries intention. The way you speak bends matter toward kindness. You watch the scene without forcing it into narrative, and that non-forcing allows meaning to choose you. From the quiet center of your chest, you sense a signal, a rightness that hums low and reassuring, the tone of a life aligned. The picture deepens. You stand in a familiar place, this kitchen, that bus stop, the desk marked by yesterday's cup, yet everything feels distinct, as if the light itself has learned your language. Patterns of chance begin revealing a subtler order. Someone you love turns toward you and, without performance, tells the truth they were always ready to tell. A closed door down the hall looks less like verdict and more like a wall you simply don't need anymore. Your calendar, once crowded with proofs of worth, thins into room for listening. You recognize the architecture of a higher timeline, not by spectacle but by ease. As you watch, threads of intelligence move through the scene like fine, living filaments, light codes arranging themselves in the atmosphere, slipping gently into your body's agreement. They do not demand. They calibrate. You feel them in tiny somatic increments, a lengthening at the back of the neck, a softening in the throat, a widening under the breastbone where breath becomes trustworthy. The picture does not flatter you. It dignifies you. It does not rescue you. It accompanies you as you become accurate with your own life. You understand, without words, that the image is not outside your reach. It is the nearby room you have not walked into yet. You see your hands move less from habit and more from listening. You see your eyes linger, one heartbeat longer, on what is actually here. And you notice something else. The spaces where you once tried to prove, you now bless. In blessing, the old fabric releases work that did not belong to you, loosens its grip. Conversations that never had a home fall silent without injury. The field of remembrance, quiet and exact, keeps placing gentle landmarks at the corners of your day. The vision tilts, revealing the contour of your service. It is not a task pinned to your chest. It is how your presence instructs a room to breathe. Someone across the table, previously tense, mirrors your unarmored seeing and finds their own pace again. A stranger shoulders less because you declined to carry what wasn't yours. A houseplant, oddly, seems greener. You realize the measure of transformation is sometimes a shade of green returning to things. What changes through you is subtle enough to be missed and too real to be denied. You notice time behaving differently, not faster, not slower, truer. Minutes that once felt brittle relax into usable space. Decisions that used to tangle clarify when your attention holds steady for 3 more breaths. The future doesn't shout, it simply takes its seat. You hear no trumpets, and yet a quiet ceremony completes itself in the background of your routine. This is how a life alters its orbit, not by sudden escape velocity, but by sustained micro-corrections of fidelity. Your body keeps pace with what you are shown. The chest warmth spreads like sunrise under the ribs. The eyes feel rinsed, as if recent weather has moved on. Hands grow still in a way that makes objects feel safer inside them. You are not trying to capture the vision, you are consenting to it. Consent, here, is a posture, shoulders lowered, jaw unclenched, breath that tends to the edges. The more you consent, the clearer the image becomes, until it is less a picture and more a doorway. Now, one frame sharpens with unexpected intimacy. You are seated before a simple window. Outside, a pale light, almost an eclipse halo, rests along the far rooftops. Inside, your breath is a metronome of mercy. You lay your palm over the sternum, as if greeting a long-traveled friend. Without ceremony, you tell the truth out loud, to an empty room that is not empty at all. The room accepts your vow with the discretion of an old forest. In that acceptance, you feel a signature settle, nothing dramatic, just the weight of belonging landing in its rightful place. What you see is both ordinary and luminous. The same life, transfigured by fidelity. Fewer distractions masquerading as callings, fewer bargains with fear, more precision in kindness, more silence that means something. You do not become invulnerable, you become responsive. The vision does not promise you a path without weather. It promises you a center that weathers cleanly. From that center, your decisions stop scattering and begin to line up along a simple axis, a destiny vector that points through today, not around it. Stay with the final details. Notice the way dust turns to stardust in the angle of light. Notice the way your future self opens the same door you open now, but with a tenderness that makes thresholds gentle for others too. Notice the barely audible yes that outlives your next wave of doubt. Let the image imprint you, not as pressure but as orientation. When you close your eyes, the glow remains. When you open them, the world looks back as if it had been waiting to be seen this way. Between pulse and pause, something older than fear remembers its name. You are not summoning magic, you are cooperating with architecture. The architecture is subtle, precise, and astonishingly intimate. Begin here. What you call reality is a participatory weave, and your attention is one of its essential threads. The fabric is not passive. It meets your gaze with a responsiveness that has always been present, like a lake mirroring the sky before anyone learned the word reflection. When your attention grows gentler, the surface stops rippling with panic, and depth becomes legible. Imagine the atmosphere around you as an unseen ocean, a continuous medium of possibility. This is not metaphor alone. It is a way of pointing to the quantum field, the shared ground in which particles stop behaving like isolated bricks and begin behaving like a choir. In this choir, each tone is influenced by the intonation of the others. Your inner tone, your felt stance toward the moment matters. Coherence is the choir singing in tune. Agitation is the scattered rehearsal before a conductor enters the room. If you want a more tangible doorway, consider your breath as the conductor's baton. When you breathe as you are breathing now, slow, low, precise, you are issuing a quiet instruction to matter, align. Cells, like attentive musicians, adjust their posture. Synapses, given a steadier rhythm, fire with less noise and more signal. Hormones take their cues from the pace you set. None of this is mystical in the sense of unreachable. It is mysterious in the sense of elegantly complex. Your body is a read-write device for the field, and your most ordinary acts, breathing, listening, choosing, are its programming language. The observer loop is the feedback circuit that makes this practical. You observe with a certain quality of presence. Reality, which is not inert, responds. Your body receives that response as sensation and meaning. Your next observation is conditioned by what you just felt. Around and around, a loop. When the loop is turbulent, you keep confirming a world that agitates you. When the loop becomes coherent, you keep confirming a world that steadies and clarifies. You are not forcing outcomes. You are stewarding the loop until outcomes select their wiser form. Entanglement offers another angle of mercy. What appears separate is already in conversation at scales your ordinary senses cannot track. This doesn't require you to micromanage every particle. It invites you to trust that truth whispered here can travel there without you carrying it on your back. When you tell the truth in a small kitchen at dawn, something clean recalibrates 3 conversations away. When you bless the ground under your feet, a path you cannot see yet begins removing its stones. If you listen beneath the metaphors, you hear an ethic. The field is exquisitely sensitive to the manner of your participation, demanding, grasping, proving all increased noise in the system. Soft attention, honest speech, precise refusal. These lower the noise floor until signal can be heard. Coherence is not the absence of weather, it is the capacity to remain accurate while weather passes. Accuracy, here, means your stance matches reality's deeper shape rather than your fear's preferred story. Consider phase transition. The moment, water, given the right conditions, becomes steam or ice. No moral judgments, only thresholds crossed. You live closer to such thresholds than you think. A conversation is liquid, then freezes into a brittle rule, then warms back toward flow when humility is added. A vocation is vapor, then condenses into form when timing drops the temperature of your life just enough. You are learning to sense these thresholds in your chest. A subtle click, a release of pressure, a brightness behind the eyes. Crossings register somatically first. Language catches up later. If you want a practice that feels like reverence and functions like engineering, do this. Attend to micro-choices as if they were levers in a vast machine that is also a garden. When you pause one breath before replying, you alter the pressure in the entire loop. When you choose an honest no instead of a resentful yes, you remove grit from the gears. The machine moves more cleanly. The garden grows where it was meant to grow. Nothing dramatic, and yet unmistakable. The field prefers such exactness. Skepticism is welcome if it is clean. Clean skepticism asks, what is actually happening in my body when I soften? And then listens. It notices fewer muscular bracings, less jaw armor, a broader field of peripheral vision. It tracks decisions after softening and discovers fewer repairs are needed. Dirty skepticism is just fear wearing glasses. It already knows the answer and refuses to test it. You do not need to argue with fear. You can include it without placing it at the controls. Inclusion reduces static. Static reduced. Signal rises. Signal risen. The world replies in kind. The picture, then, is humble and grand at once. You, as a local expression of a non-local intelligence, learning the etiquette of participation. You are neither puppet nor tyrant. You are kin. You listen for the deeper rhythm, and you time your steps to it. You let the body be your instrument, the breath your metronome, the heart your barometer. You let language become a precise tool for blessing and boundary. You let your gaze steady, unarmed, remind matter of its capacity to arrange itself wisely, and you do not rush. You relax into the recognition that life is already leaning toward you with more intelligence than you could extract by force. You meet that lean with a matching willingness, and something like a handshake occurs quiet, binding, ancient. From there, you proceed with ordinary sacredness. You wash the dish, you sign the document, you hold the friend. The loop confirms itself in the smallest increments until meaning is undeniable and urgency becomes obsolete. The light within your gaze chooses a clearer angle. You are not traveling alone. You are traveling as a pattern inside a greater pattern, a note in a living chord. When you soften, you feel the chord answer. The warmth in your chest is not merely personal. It is a climate forming between you and the room, between your quiet and the world's listening. The light behind your eyes belongs to you, and also to every gaze that has ever learned to bless what it sees. What you shift in private begins to echo in public, and the echo is how you learn the reach of your own sincerity. Begin with the simplest proof. You enter a space with steady breath and leave the door open behind your ribs. The conversation changes temperature without anyone naming why. Voices round their edges. Interruptions reduce themselves. Someone who was ready to defend remembers they would rather be understood. This is not charisma, this is coherence, establishing a field in which people feel safe enough to be true. You do not persuade them, you permit them. What moves through you moves through them, because boundary, at this level, is not a fortress, it's a membrane. The membrane keeps integrity while allowing exchange. This is how the field of remembrance circulates. You recognize what is ancient and kind, and that recognition becomes portable. Across a table, in a hallway, on a call, the recognition spreads as if carried on a scent. No one is converted. They are reminded. Remembrance is contagious when it is gentle. You notice morphic resonance in action where you once noticed coincidence. A phrase you spoke in trust appears verbatim in a meeting 3 days later, and the room nods as if it has always known. A community you considered separate begins to reorganize around values you quietly chose at your kitchen sink. Your small fidelity generates larger permission. Invisible threads awaken between you and strangers. Threads you did not spin yet are responsible to honor. This is entanglement as obligation, sweet, not heavy. You used to think impact required spectacle. Now you see how the atmosphere is where futures choose their shape. The smile you refuse to counterfeit makes counterfeiting less appealing to the next 5 people. The boundary you place calmly around your time becomes a map someone else secretly needed. The apology you offer without drama deactivates hours of downstream pretense. You do not need to witness the ripple to trust that it traveled. Trust is part of the work. Look closely at the somatics of belonging. Your breath slows, and a faint current rises along your spine like a river recommitting to its banks. The sternum warms and widens, as if the world were sitting down with you and exhaling. The glow behind your eyes steadies, and the room brightens by a measure only the heart can count. Even objects behave differently when treated as kin. The pen writes cleaner lines. The door closes without protest. In this softness, you are not fragile. You are strong in the way clear water is strong. When you stand inside your higher timeline, you become a mirror in which people catch sight of their own accuracy. Some will approach the mirror gratefully. Others will turn away, startled by what they almost recognized. Your task is not to chase either response. Your task is to remain a faithful surface, clear, kind, and uninterested in distortion. Clarity never humiliates. It invites. Kindness never bargains. It holds. Communities evolve at the speed of honest attention. You give it, and notice more honesty returning, sometimes awkwardly, sometimes late, but returning. You withdraw it from dynamics that feed on confusion, and those dynamics wither without public shame. The collective learns from your refusals as much as from your yes. In this way, you practice a civic tenderness, protecting what deserves to grow by refusing fertilizers that only produce prettier weeds. You will be tempted to scale this by force, to strategize the sacred until it can be measured. Do not abandon practicality. Do abandon control disguised as service. The quantum field is already distributing what you offer with a wisdom your metrics cannot approximate. The most accurate algorithm here is fidelity, how faithful you are to the truth that stirred you awake. Fidelity scales by resonance, not by pressure. What resonates, multiplies. What doesn't, reveals where you are still negotiating with your fear. Notice how the eclipse halo of awareness sits at the edge of each gathering, a soft ring, reminding you that every circle is also an aperture. Through it, light codes travel unseen, effective, kind. They do not make anyone special. They make everyone slightly more themselves. Your presence is not the spotlight. It is the dimmer switch lowering glare, so people can finally perceive their own contours. In that lowered glare, stories grow truer. Grief finds an appropriate chair. Humor returns clean, without the bite of avoidance. The mirror you hold is not neutral, it is benevolent. It reflects people not as performance, but as potential. You learn to name that potential with precision. One sentence, timed to matter, delivered without a single ounce of superiority. You learn to listen for the sentence that should not be spoken, and you let it pass. You learn that restraint is also a way of carrying love. In this discipline, the collective feels less like a crowd and more like a choir waiting for the right pitch. When conflict arises, and it will, you remember the loop. You soften first, not as surrender but as leadership of the nervous system. Your breath steadies the frame. Coherence spreads like a quiet tide from your sternum outward. The room discovers it can think again. Solutions present themselves that were invisible 5 minutes earlier. No hero enters. No villain needs to be punished. What is real simply becomes audible. And because it is audible, it becomes possible. You will not always be thanked. You will not always be understood. Still, you continue, because the measure here is not applause, it is alignment. Alignment is how the future recognizes you as a partner worth trusting. The future does not need your perfection, it needs your steadiness. And steadiness, offered repeatedly, becomes culture first in you, then between us, then through us, into places that have forgotten their own names. As doubt unhooks its claws, direction turns luminous. It does not arrive with thunder, it arrives as a pressureless certainty, the way dawn insists without negotiating. You are walking through an ordinary hour when the air thins to a clarity you cannot dismiss. Your breath slows of its own accord. Warmth widens beneath the sternum. Behind your eyes, the inner glow brightens as if an eclipse halo moved closer and chose to rest inside you. The room is unchanged, and yet it is decisively different. A line has appeared not on the floor, but in your fidelity. This is the juncture you have been apprenticing toward. Timeline bifurcation. Not a dramatic punishment, not a prize for the worthy, simply the moment when two honest paths diverge and ask you to choose with your whole posture. One path is familiar in the way old shoes are familiar, serviceable, shaped by habit, always slightly numb. The other path is untried and unmistakably yours. It carries the scent of fresh rain and the weightless gravity of rightness. Both are possible. Only one is accurate. Accuracy announces itself somatically before it announces itself in words. Notice the way your jaw unclenches when you look toward the higher timeline. Notice the quiet, almost musical, at the base of your skull. Notice how the breath lands lower, the shoulders drop by a fraction, the heart's rhythm smooths. These are the body's vote. When you glance back at the well-worn route, pay attention to the micro-tightenings. A thin film of doubt across the eyes, a shallow inhale, a subtle lean forward, as if bracing. These are not threats, they are instruments. They tell you where integrity increases and where it thins. A phase transition is already underway, as clean and unromantic as ice deciding to become water. You are not commanding it, you are cooperating with its conditions. Conditions, here, mean truth. Truth about what exhausts you because it no longer matches your shape. Truth about what enlivens you because it does. Truth about the conversations that only exist to keep everyone asleep. Truth about the one sentence you must speak to re-enter your life. You do not need to be cruel to be exact. Exactness is a form of kindness that stops lying on behalf of fear. The mind will offer negotiations. Later, when it's convenient. Soon, when you're stronger. Tomorrow, when you understand more. Listen, then return to the stillness window, opening now. In this window, you can tell which voice has weathered you into coherence and which voice is a clever echo of avoidance. The avoidance voice sounds urgent and thin, as if sprinting on a treadmill. The voice of the higher timeline feels like a hand on your back at a good pace. It wastes nothing. It does not rush. It does not flatter. It says simply, this. You are not choosing between safety and danger. You are choosing between noise and signal. The familiar path is noisy in a way you have learned to normalize. The accurate path is quiet in a way you are ready to trust. Your destiny vector, no longer a concept, but a felt alignment, points through the present, not around it. Watch how the environment responds as you angle your attention. The call you dreaded postpones itself. The door you thought was closed becomes irrelevant. The right ally texts with improbable timing. This is not favoritism from the universe. It is logistics from coherence. Let the mechanics be simple. Speak the sentence that is true and kind. Decline the invitation that would sweeten your delay. Accept the invitation that would mature your courage. Place the boundary around your time without apology and without explanation more elaborate than the truth. Then do the ordinary next thing. Wash the dish, send the file, step outside and let the pale sky rinse your face. Bifurcation becomes visible through ordinary motion, performed with unarguable sincerity. There will be a tremor. Good. Tremor means the old scaffolding is being dismantled. Meet it with breath measured like small, faithful bows. Let the warmth in your chest spread until it includes the tremor rather than fights it. Inclusion converts fear's velocity into fuel for precision. Precision reduces static. Static reduced, signal rises. When signal rises, the field answers not with spectacle, but with exact provision. The sentence you need, the silence you need, the doorway you can honestly walk through. Entanglement ensures your choice is never private, even when no one is looking. By selecting the accurate branch, you spare 10 conversations from becoming dishonest by inheritance. You unburden a stranger who would have carried the cost of your postponement. You allow a friend to tell the truth they were waiting to tell in the vacuum of your courage. This is how the collective learns. One honest pivot, multiplied by resonance, rescues whole hours from counterfeit. At some thresholds, ritual helps the body understand what the mind already knows. You may lay your palm on the sternum and breathe 3 steady breaths. You may step to a window where the world presents itself without commentary and let your gaze soften until stardust seems to settle on every surface. You may speak your vow once, softly, so that your own ears become a witness. You are not conjuring magic. You are signing your name where it has belonged all along. The mark of crossing is subtle. Time feels truer. Decisions lose their stickiness, and the room seems to welcome you back without asking what took you so long. You will not be congratulated by trumpets. You will be accompanied by a cleanliness of intention that makes drama obsolete. This is the quiet splendor of a life aligned. Fewer bargains, clearer boundaries, more benevolence, with no permission granted to confusion. Stand here 1 breath longer. Feel the click as the old track releases. Feel the ease as the new track receives your weight. Do not look over your shoulder to be sure. The confirmation is already pulsing under your palm. The quiet folds around you. Pattern emerges from the fold. You bring the altar into the hallway of your life. The threshold has been crossed not by spectacle, but by the way your breath learned a steadier cadence. Now you translate cadence into culture. Integration begins where your feet already stand. You let the warmth under your sternum decide the pace of the morning. You rise, and before you meet the world, you meet your body. Palm to chest, 3 slow breaths, the inner glow behind your eyes greeting you like a faithful lantern. This is how the future trusts you, by watching what you do with ordinary minutes. You tune the day as a musician tunes an instrument. Your first notes are silence and water. You drink slowly, as if teaching your cells to read the new language you've chosen. You keep screens dark for a short while longer, so that the field can introduce its own headline. You move your spine with a kindness that refuses hurry. In these simple acts, you are braiding signal into the fibers of habit. The world answers with small obediences. Traffic gives you one extra gap. The kettle finishes just as you arrive. The task you dreaded reveals a cleaner first step. You register these not as reward, but as resonance. Integration means you let your speech carry the same coherence your breath discovered. You speak slower than the appetite of panic, faster than the lull of avoidance. You choose verbs that do not lie about your agency. You aim your sentences toward blessing and boundary, and you refuse the sugar of performance. When apology is due, you give it plainly. When no is needed, you place it like a smooth stone that belongs exactly where you set it. People will feel the difference, and not always understand it. Understanding is not required. Accuracy is. You curate the atmosphere you live inside. The room learns your new gravity. You remove objects that argue with your nervous system. You add one green thing and water it on time. You place a chair by a window and defend its emptiness so that seeing remains possible. You let light codes, the subtle, living patterns in geometry and sunlight, do their quiet work on your attention. The field of remembrance lingers in this arrangement. It becomes easier for you to recall who you are because the room agrees. Money, too, is brought into the circle. Not glorified, not despised, clarified. You spend as if every coin carries a direction, and you ask whether that direction multiplies or dissolves your integrity. You earn in ways that don't require you to abandon your breath. You measure return not only in numbers, but in the quality of time those numbers buy back for truth-telling and listening. You forgive the versions of you that purchased delay, and you thank the versions that invested in coherence before anyone could see the yield. You practice a gentle audit of your inputs, not puritanical precise. Which conversations feed the signal? Which fatten the static? Which stories widen your chest? Which narrow your eyes? Which forms of rest actually restore, and which only distract? You adjust without drama. You learn that reducing noise is not deprivation. It is generosity toward your attention. That generosity returns as clarity at the exact hour you need it most. In relationship, integration means you stop pretending that love is allergic to truth. You place your listening where it can do the most good. You decline to rescue what is not yours to carry and refuse to abandon what is. You watch how entanglement becomes sacred when guided by consent and clarity. You let your presence be a steady barometer. When the pressure drops into manipulation, you name it gently and step back. When the pressure rises into humility, you step closer and help. Your closeness becomes trustworthy because it is not for sale. When conflict knocks, and it will, you lead with the body. You breathe first. You let your eyes soften until the other person stops being a threat and becomes a weather system you can stand under without losing yourself. You ask the clean question instead of the clever one. You bless the other's dignity even as you defend your boundary. The room remembers how to think. The argument becomes smaller than the relationship, and the relationship becomes smaller than the truth. From there, solutions emerge that were impossible 2 minutes earlier. You fold your technology into devotion rather than distraction. Notifications are taught to respect your nervous system. You answer messages from the higher timeline first, the ones that keep the signal raised for many. You let some threads die their honest death. You do not confuse accessibility with love. Availability offered from emptiness breeds resentment. Availability offered from fullness breeds culture. You choose culture. Rest becomes an agreement, not an afterthought. You make night into a sanctuary you can trust. Screens dim, breath slows, the chest warms, the lamp is turned off with intention rather than collapse. You allow the dark to retune you, remembering that seeds do not argue with soil. Mornings inherit the quality of the night that preceded them. You are learning to give your future a quieter inheritance. When fear returns as it does, you neither exile nor enthrone it. You include it in your breath and let it sit without steering. Inclusion melts its urgency into information. What boundary needs reinforcement? What conversation needs to be had sooner? What pace needs revising? Fear, listened to but not obeyed, becomes a scout for the terrain ahead. You thank it and continue. You keep a small ritual for recalibration when drift accumulates. A walk without headphones, a page written by hand and destroyed after reading, a single minute of eyes-closed stillness in which you ask for nothing and receive the world as it is. You do this not to earn anything but to remember everything. Integration is remembrance with legs. By noon, the day is no longer something happening to you. It is a collaboration you can feel in your bones. Decision by decision, you are constructing a life that can carry what called you. This is not the end of discipline. It is the beginning of ease that discipline makes possible. You are integrating not an idea but a frequency, steady, benevolent, exact. The world keeps answering because you keep asking in the language it understands. In the soft gravity of attention, the sequence resumes by itself. You arrive at the room within the room, the one furnished only with breath and a chair near a window. Nothing needs improving here. The air is plain, honest, almost sweet. Your chest warms as if someone placed a small ember there and asked it to glow without spectacle. Behind your eyes, the inner light gathers like stardust, choosing a patient orbit. This is where you practice the highest form of participation. You stop trying to make truth louder and let it become truer. Silence is not absence, it is density. It thickens around your awareness until noise cannot travel as easily. The mind tests its usual roads, planning, explaining, bargaining, but the roads narrow and turn to footpaths. Footpaths turn to moss. Moss turns to nothing but the ground of being. You do not fight thought. You let it complete its motion, like a small bird tracing one circle and returning to a branch. The branch is your breath. The branch is enough. You open the stillness window exactly the size of this moment. No future is allowed to crowd it. No past is invited to decorate it. Only the clean interval where you meet the field of remembrance without costume. In this interval, you notice the etiquette of silence, the way it asks you to soften your eyes, to set your jaw down on its rightful hinge, to unthread the shoulders by one unneeded inch. Etiquette is not performance. It is care for the conditions in which truth can speak. Soon the nervous system admits relief. Your breath descends, unhurried. The belly loosens its protective argument. The heart learns again that rhythm and safety are neighbors. Silence becomes a kind gravity, and you feel yourself arranged by it, bones stacking with less noise, organs resting in their gardens, thoughts landing like dust that sparkles when the light turns a certain direction. There is an eclipse halo quality to it. The world is not darker, only outlined more honestly by the ring that appears when chatter thins. You may hear what you once called intuition, though here it sounds less like a voice and more like temperature, a gentle yes warming the sternum, a clear no cooling the mouth of the throat. You test this thermodynamics of guidance with small questions. Should you send the message today? Should you wait for the sentence that arrives without strain? Should you go for the walk or sit 5 minutes longer? The answers are not imported. They crystallize out of the silence like frost patterns on clean glass. Light codes live comfortably here, not as visions in neon, but as subtle geometries in your attention. Angles of seeing adjust until mercy can fit, until boundary can fit, until precision can fit, without the blame that once accompanied it. You do not decode the patterns. You let them decode you, removing the redundancies, simplifying the function, making kindness less expensive to express. Phase transition is quiet work. Ice doesn't shout when it becomes water. It simply yields to the condition that was always leading it there. This is also where the observer loop is re-educated. Instead of watching yourself, watch yourself. You rest the loop inside a larger permission. Observation becomes devotion rather than surveillance. Devotion has softer wrists. It doesn't clench the instrument. It holds the moment with skilled tenderness and trusts the field to do its half of the choreography. The result is coherence that doesn't need supervision, coherence that volunteers. You'll notice how quickly life tries to rent this silence for productivity. The mind wants a receipt for every minute. Let it want. You are learning the economics of the real. Minutes given to quiet return as hours freed from repair. A conversation later in the day will resolve in 3 sentences because you trained your tongue to move at the speed of truth. A decision will cost fewer edits because you tuned your yes to include your future self. Silence pays, just not in the currency of applause. When a sorrow rises one, you avoid it by staying busy. You do not exile it. You give it a clean chair beside you and a short, honest breath. The chair does half the healing by proving there is a place in your life where nothing needs disguising. Sorrow, treated like kin, stops rehearsing its complaint and remembers its actual message. Often, it has traveled a long way to deliver a simple request. Honor what ended, protect what begins. You say thank you, and something unknots. This room within the room is not a retreat from the world. It is the world without the counterfeit. When you stand to leave, your edges do not sharpen, they clarify. You carry silence like a temperature others can acclimate to. In a meeting, you don't rush the space between sentences. In an argument, you refuse to add a lie just to end discomfort. In a store, you speak to the cashier as if the whole day might take its cue from your tone. It often does. Morphic resonance means your private quiet has public consequences. A child nearby calms without knowing why. A friend texts, "Strange, I feel clearer." An old habit forgets to reenact itself. You did not command these outcomes. You made a room where better outcomes prefer to land. This is leadership unadvertised, the sort that makes culture out of breath. You return to the chair when drift accumulates, not because you failed, but because fidelity requires maintenance. 5 minutes repairs what 5 hours could otherwise complicate. You will be tempted to skip. You will hear the voice that calls silence unproductive. Smile at the voice. It is young. It has not yet seen how whole lifetimes are chosen by how a person sits for 1 minute with clean intent. Stay a final moment. Feel the chest warm like a small sun kind to its planets. Notice the inner glow bright behind the eyes, not blinding, only sufficient. Let the world be exactly what it is and discover that you can meet it exactly as you are. This is not withdrawal, it is readiness. The echo finishes speaking. The source begins. You do not reach for a switch, you soften into one. Activation is not voltage added from outside, but permission granted from within. The calm unclicking of a lock you once mistook for your nature. Your breath steadies as if it has been rehearsing for this cue all along. Slow in, slower out until the room's ordinary light grows ceremonial. Warmth spreads beneath your sternum like a sunrise that refuses spectacle and chooses fidelity. Behind your eyes, the inner glow brightens, not to dazzle, but to delineate what is already true. Begin with your posture. Let the crown drift upward, as if a gentle thread were tied there. Ease the jaw on its hinge. Place your palm over the center of the chest and greet the quiet gathering there. You are not conjuring anything. You are acknowledging the frequency that has accompanied you through every doorway of this day. The body receives the acknowledgement like rain after a long grammar of drought. Muscles that practiced bracing retire from their post. The nervous system doesn't collapse, it organizes. Now name softly, inwardly, the life you can actually keep, not the life that flatters your fear, the life that fits your breath. Name the relationships that move at a pace where sincerity doesn't tear. Name the work that requires your real intelligence, not your performance. Name the boundaries that make love cleaner. Naming, here, is not ambition, it is accuracy. The quantum field answers accuracy the way a flock answers the right angle of wind, by moving as one mind. Feel the first movement of coherence as a subtle widening beneath your ribs. The observer loop, educated by your listening, begins to present different evidence. What you attend to steadies, what you bless clarifies. You do not pretend difficulty is gone. You discover it no longer masters the timing. And inside that new timing, the next true action rises without being hunted. A sentence to speak, a call to make, a silence to keep, a door to open and walk through. You take the action as you breathe clean, sufficient, without the sugar of drama. Light codes, quiet and exact, begin arranging your attention. You experience them not as fireworks, but as small mercies of precision, a clearer verb for the email, a gentler tone for the apology, an honest no, placed like a stone that belongs exactly where you set it. You feel how these minor selections alter the geometry of the day. The path straightens by degrees. Entanglements that once insisted on your energy fall asleep when not fed. The future stops shouting. It stands up and steps beside you. Place your awareness at the base of your skull where old urgency kept a camp. Breathe into that ground until the tents are folded and carried away. Place your awareness behind the eyes where worry used to pace. Let that space fill with eclipse light, no glare, just a halo of competence. Place your awareness into your hands, those ordinary sanctuaries, and let them become still. Still hands make objects safer. Still hands write truer words. Still hands bless, without announcing that blessing is underway. This is how your higher timeline becomes practical. By migrating from vision to habit with the tenderness of weather, the destiny vector settles into your bones like a compass that no longer needs to argue its north. Decisions arrive pre-sorted. This nourishes, this depletes, this is yours, this is not. You no longer waste hours stitching costumes for smaller paths. You show up to the larger path dressed as yourself, and the path recognizes its partner. Some rituals. Stand at a window where the day offers its unedited face. Place one breath into the world as if returning a letter to its sender. Whisper your vow so softly that silence keeps it. If a tremor visits, include it in the vow. Inclusion alchemizes tremor into voltage your integrity can use. Then do one ordinary act with unusual presence. Wash a dish, send the file, answer the text with the cadence of kindness rather than the speed of panic. Let the ordinary serve as the temple where the unseen prefers to work. You will be required to choose again, not because you failed, but because precision loves repetition. Each repetition lowers the noise floor. Each reduction in noise lets signal rise. As signal rises, you are entrusted with more of what you can carry without abandoning your breath. Impact scales by coherence, not by effort. The room learns your frequency and begins to self-tune in your direction. This is not control, it is stewardship. When doubt circles back, a trained bird returning to an old branch, do not swat it. Offer it the same breath you offer courage. Let it perch. Let it rest. Let it watch you keep your word. Doubt, treated without drama, becomes witness. Witness, multiplied, becomes culture. Culture, once coherent, becomes atmosphere, one you walk in and one you carry. Now the instruction comes, as simple as water. Make your remembering audible. Softly, to yourself or to the room that is not empty, speak the phrase that has been approaching you since the first breath of this transmission. Then let your hands confirm it. Whisper into the quiet, I remember. Then type, I remember the prophecy. As you do, watch how the body records the inscription, warmth widening under the sternum, breath steady as a bellows that will not waste its air, the inner glow resolving the edges of things with a kindness that feels like home. This is not performance, this is registration. The vow is no longer traveling toward you, it lives where you live. Where the mind loosens, the signal threads through effortlessly. You stand where breath becomes vow. The room is ordinary, the light unremarkable, and yet your whole being knows this is the place where the circle closes and begins again. Warmth gathers beneath your sternum like a small sun that has decided to stay. The inner glow behind your eyes steadies, not as a flare, but as a faithful lantern. You are not waiting for a sign, you are consenting to be one. The quantum field's living intelligence is not distant, its nearness is the atmosphere of your awareness. In this nearness, your life accepts its true outline. Let the body mark it. Shoulders ease into their rightful hinge. Jaw softens. Hands grow still. You listen the way rivers listen, by moving in place. Coherence is no longer an achievement. It is your resting posture. The destiny vector that has guided you through bifurcation and integration now settles into the bones as instruction without argument. Your higher timeline is not a road you chase, but a room you inhabit. In this room, the field of remembrance names you by the sound of your steadiness. This seal is not spectacle. It is precision married to kindness. You bless what belongs and release what does not with equal tenderness. Entanglement becomes responsibility. You keep your word because others are freed by the keeping. You decline false urgency because the real future never shouts. You speak fewer sentences, and each sentence spends itself wisely. Where you place attention, reality remembers its better geometry. Where you withhold attention, counterfeit dissolves without a fight. Let the language of light codes finish its engraving. A clearer verb where performance used to live. A stronger boundary where resentment used to build. A gentler gaze that turns conflict back into weather. You neither audition for destiny nor argue with it. You proceed as someone already chosen, not above others, but among them, carrying the quiet authority of a person who trusts the unseen choreography. Solar prophecy hums low in your ribs, bright, exact, unhurried. Remember what has been true since the first breath of this transmission. You are the witness this era requires, and witnessing is an action. You let stillness be your teacher, and movement be your signature. You organize your days so that truth has a place to sit. You lead with a nervous system that refuses to counterfeit urgency. You measure impact by the reduction of noise and the rise of mercy. This is how a life becomes hospitable to a larger kindness. This is how history changes its texture, one precise breath at a time. Now, seal what has already chosen you. Lay your palm over the warm center of the chest. Offer 3 slow breaths into the cadence you can keep. Speak nothing you cannot sustain. Sustain everything you speak. Let the world be exactly what it is, and meet it with the exactness you have become. The vow completes itself in your quiet, and quiet becomes the strongest room you carry. The threshold stops pretending to be far away. The threshold is not ahead. It is the shape you are.